The show's protagonist is a strange girl named Wednesday Addams. Despite her age, the little girl shows few emotions and has an odd obsession with death. She is also known for wearing strange black and white gothic clothing. In the first scene, Wednesday arrives at her school with a creepy expression on her face. She opens her locker and discovers her brother, Pugsley, bound with an apple in his mouth. Wednesday has a sudden vision of the person who tortured her brother as she forces him out the door. This is where we learn that she is not your typical teenager. Wednesday can see into the future and into the past by simply touching a person. After discovering that a group of bullies from the swim team are behind this, she walks into the swimming room with 2 bags full of piranhas. Then she casually released the bloodthirsty piranhas in the pool. As the bullies flee for their lives in terror, Wednesday makes it clear that nobody picks on her brother except her. Cut to the next scene, we are introduced to Wednesday's parents, Morticia and Gomez. They've finally had it with their daughter's misbehavior and have decided to send her to the Elite Nevermore Academy. The students at this school all have access to some sort of extraordinary power, and the faculty gives them guidance on how to control it. Gomez and Morticia are both graduates of the same academy, implying that they, too, have superpowers. Meanwhile, a hiker ventures into the woods near Nevermore Academy on his own. Unfortunately, an unknown beast strikes him and finishes him out after only a few minutes. Eventually, the local sheriff discovers the mutilated body and begins investigating the scene. It turns out that this gruesome killing isn't an isolated incident. There have been several others like it recently. Wednesday arrives at the academy and meets the principal, Larissa Weems, who manages Never Academy with ease. She introduces her to her roommate, Enid, a werewolf who is in every sense the opposite of Wednesday. Enid is a laid-back girl with brightly colored decorations on her side of the room, whereas Wednesday is obsessed with all things black and goth. Later, Enid takes Wednesday on a grand tour of the academy, pointing out the 4 major school groups: Fangs, Furs, Stoners, and Scales. The Fangs are vampires, Furs are werewolves, Stoners are gorgons with snakes on their skulls, and Scales are sirens with the capacity to control humans. Enid also shows her the most popular girl at school, Bianca Barclay, a stunning siren, and her ex-boyfriend Xavier Thorpe, a death artist who can turn his drawings into reality. Meanwhile, as the Addams family drives away in their car, Gomez unleashes Thing, a severed living hand. Thing is tasked with keeping an eye on their daughter. Wednesday then attends fencing class, where she is placed against the excellent Bianca. After some back and forth, the females find themselves with equal points, so they decide to remove their masks and fight until one of them draws blood. Soon after, a violent combat unfolds, with each of them matching each other stride for stride. However, in the end, Bianca wins when she slashes a small cut on Wednesday's face. Later, when Wednesday is leaving the infirmary after being bandaged, she is nearly crushed to death by a falling stone gargoyle. Fortunately, Xavier, the death artist, arrives just in time and pushes her out of the way. Wednesday returns to her room shortly after, but she worries that someone is watching her. This prompts her to look around the room before discovering the hand thing. Wednesday blames her parents and threatens the hand with confinement unless he proves his loyalty to her. Things makes a promise of faithfulness out of fear. Due to Wednesday's piranha prank, she has to take mandatory therapy sessions. So Larissa, her principal, drives her to her treatment session in Jericho, a little village outside of Nevermore. She meets with her therapist but says nothing. Wednesday, on the other hand, has a different plan. She excuses herself to use the restroom and flees via the window. She unexpectedly runs into a man outside. Suddenly, she experiences a vision in which she observes the man's death. Wednesday, terrified, visits a local coffee shop there. She meets Tyler, the sheriff's son, who also works as a barista. Tyler is having some mechanical issues with his espresso machine. The instructions are bizarrely in Italian, but Wednesday, happily, can read Italian. She quickly fixes the device and requests a ride to the nearest bus stop. But before Tyler can respond, a trio of bullies dressed as pilgrims storm the store and taunt her. Wednesday attempts to ignore them, but when she has had enough, she fights back and easily slaps them down. Principal Larissa comes to the store with the sheriff after a while and notices the carnage. She lashes out at Wednesday before driving her out of town. They pass a nasty car wreck on their way to the academy. The victim is the same man Wednesday saw earlier in her vision. Later that night, in the dorm balcony, she plays a mournful melody on her cello. It's a full moon night, and you can hear numerous werewolves howling in the distance. Enid, who is a werewolf herself, says that she will not join them because she cannot transform. Meanwhile, Thing enters Tyler's room and requests that he call Wednesday. Despite his fear, he agrees, and the two begin video chatting. Wednesday invites Tyler to meet her at the harvest fair the next day, suggesting that it will be fun in reality. She only wants to get away from the academy. While visiting the fair, we witness Larissa keeping a close eye on Wednesday. Despite this, the goth teenager manages to catch up with Tyler. The two are about to leave when Wednesday runs into one of her classmates, Rowan. He dashes into the woods, and she has a vision. Rowan has been viciously mauled to death by someone. Terrified, she changes her mind and follows him to inform him of the news. But before she can say anything, Rowan uses his telekinesis to secure her high up on a tree. He then discloses that 25 years ago, his mother, a powerful seer, predicted Wednesday destroying the Nevermore Academy. As a result, Rowan believes he must kill her before anything awful happened. He then begins telekinetically choking her, but then a gigantic creature comes in, tears Rowan apart, and vanishes into thin air. Wednesday stands over his disfigured body, looking at the alleged drawing of his mother. Soon after, police officers led by the sheriff begin searching for Rowan's body, but they are unable to find it. The sheriff, as expected, does not buy Wednesday's statement of a monster attacking Rowan and believes it was a Nevermore student. The police interrupt their conversation, and we see Rowan, who is still alive. When Wednesday arrives at her room, she discovers that her roommate, Enid, is more engrossed with the Polo Cup competition, a boat riding contest held every year. Later, she attempts to speak with Rowan, but Principal Larissa informs her that he has been expelled for reasons she cannot disclose. As a result, Wednesday goes back to Plan B and requests that Thing keep a watch on Rowan. The picture then shifts to Rowan, who has arrived at the railway station with Thing hot on his tail. After observing his surroundings, he sneaks into the restroom and transforms himself into that of an elderly man. Thing, however, loses track of him and misses this transformation. Later, the elderly man's is changed to Larissa, the principal. This shows that she is a shapeshifter, and she is covering up Rowan's murder. Left with no options, Wednesday sets out into the woods to seek for evidence of Rowan's murder. Tyler, who is stalking his father, is accompanying her. She eventually finds Rowan's glasses, and as she picks them up, she experiences a vision. She sees a purple book in the vision, from which Rowan received the drawing. Wednesday wastes no time in confronting her class teacher about the book, and the latter admits that it belongs to an old student society known as the Nightshades. However, the society has long since been disbanded. Wednesday sneaks into Rowan's room after school to look for the book. She discovers a mask beneath his bed, but Xavier arrives before she could leave. He is Rowan's roommate, it turns out. Wednesday hastily hides beneath the bed, just as Bianca enters to see her ex. She overhears their talk and discovers that Bianca intends to humiliate in the forthcoming boat riding competition. As a result, as soon as she returns to her room, Wednesday decides to assist Enid by entering the tournament so that they can defeat Bianca. Wednesday and Enid prepare for the competition the next day. As there are no rules, everything is fair game, which Bianca is taking advantage of. The game involves 4 teams rowing their boats to a destination and returning. The winner is whoever is the first to cross the finish line without getting knocked out in the lake as the contest begins. Bianca hints one of her pals, who is planning to sabotage the other boats. The pal, who turns out to be a mermaid, dives into the lake and wrecks one of the boats, thereby knocking out the squad. Fortunately, Wednesday and Enid are prepared, and with Thing's assistance, they manage to capture the mermaid. However, during the contest has another vision. This time, she sees a blonde-haired version of herself who informs her that she is the key. Wednesday regains consciousness, only to discover that Bianca's team has taken the lead in the race. Unwilling to let up, she and Enid resolve to play dirty. They utilize Bianca's dirty tricks against her and eventually win the contest. For the first time in 4 decades, a non-siren team has won the prestigious contest. Later, Principal Larissa honors the victorious squad by handing Enid the Poe Cup trophy. Wednesday, however, is overwhelmed by the attention and seeks refuge with Edgar Allan Poe, a former scholar of the Nevermore Institution. Suddenly, she sees a symbol underneath the stone book he's holding. It's the same symbol Rowan had carved on the photo he gave her before he was mauled to death. Wednesday quickly solves a series of puzzles engraved in the book and discovers a clue, snapping twice. When she snaps twice, a secret corridor opens, revealing a hidden room. Wednesday locates Rowan's book, from which he tore the picture. She stuffs the book into her backpack, but before she can go any further, someone pulls a black sack over her head. When the bag is removed, she is surrounded by Bianca, Xavier, and a few more Nightshades Club members. Despite the fact that the group had previously been disbanded, Principal Larissa reinstated it. Xavier invites Wednesday to join their group, but she declines and walks away. In the following scene, Principal Larissa announces the annual outreach day, during which the Nevermore students will be required to interact with normal people, often known as normies, by working alongside them at their companies. Wednesday informs Xavier that his roommate may have been murdered after they arrive in town. Rowan is not dead, according to the latter, because he was simply exiled. Despite this, Wednesday shows him Rowan's mother's drawing. Xavier examines it closely and discovers that the man in the image is the founder of Jericho, Joseph Crackstone. Wednesday subsequently decides to volunteer in Pilgrim World, the place that holds Jericho's history there. She meets Eugene, a young boy she met at the beekeeping club. The two immediately begin talking and observing their surroundings. Miss Arlene, the Pilgrim World's keeper, approaches the students shortly after. She offers them a tour and tells them about some of Joseph Crackstone's most treasured possessions. Wednesday inquires further about the relics and discovers that they include original farm implements, crockery, and even the family chamber pot. She wants to work there but can't because it's being refurbished. Instead, they're all going to work at the Ye Olde Fudgery, distributing fudge and pastries to local tourists. Later, Wednesday, with the help of Eugene, sneaks into the Crackstone family chamber. She discovers a painting of the ancient meeting house in which includes the girl from her vision appears. She soon discovers the book that the girl was holding. When Wednesday realizes that the pages are blank, she assumes it is a fake. Arlene, the caretaker, arrives and catches her. Wednesday inquiries about the original book, and Arlene reluctantly discloses that it was stolen last month. Later, Tyler and Wednesday reconvene at the coffee shop. Tyler reveals that what remains of the original meeting house is out in the woods when the latter inquiries about Joseph Crackstone. It is basically a ruin, and meth users utilize it as a crash pad. Wednesday and Thing rush into the woods in search of Joseph Crackstone's home. When they finally discover it, they come across a homeless man, but Thing chokes him and scares him away. Wednesday has a vision suddenly. She travels 400 years into the past during his time. We see the blonde girl she met in her previous vision. Villagers are encircling the girl, referring to her as the devil's offspring. Soon after, Joseph Crackstone emerges from the crowd and addresses her as Goody Adams. He accuses her of witchcraft and sentences her to death in a barn with other suspected people, including her mother. Goody, in turn, accuses them of stealing their property, slaying the innocent, and stealing their peaceful soul. Joseph, enraged, stares at her for a time before setting fire to the barn. Goody attempts to free her mother, but her efforts are futile. Finally, when all hope is lost, she escapes through a trapdoor. Meanwhile, Wednesday is observing everything with them in the barn. Goody soon approaches her and declares that Joseph would not stop his mission until he has slain all of them. Wednesday awakens from her long vision and reveals everything to Thing. Suddenly, they notice the same beast that killed Rowan creeping behind them. Wednesday pursues it in the rain but is unable to keep up. As a result, she follows the footprints, which strangely start transforming into a human. This reveals that the monster is a human. She then runs into Xavier and tells him what she has seen. He wants to examine the tracks, but the rain has washed them away. The next day, everyone gathers in the town center for the unveiling of a new statue honoring Joseph Crackstone. While the mayor and Larissa announce the statue, Wednesday performs an instrumental version of Fleetwood Mac's Don't Stop with the Jericho marching band. However, calamity strikes when Thing, in accordance with Wednesday's orders, sets fire to the statue. While others flee in terror, Wednesday's eyes glitter with fury as she plays the cello swiftly. Later, Principal Larissa rips into Wednesday, assuming that she is to blame for the event. However, the teenager denies having done anything and instead confronts Larissa for refusing to face the violent racial truths upon which Jericho was created. That night, the monster attacks the homeless man from earlier, and his camera begins capturing the incident. The sheriff and his team arrive at the forest ruins moments later and discover the homeless man dead. They locate footage on his camera that could disclose the identity of the perpetrator. After processing the images, the sheriff sees the killer's face, a monster born from nightmare.